I just feel really sad for the monarchy at times because I know that's what Meghan has in her sights to do things to people like Catherine, the things that came out in that book, about calling them racist. Like she takes the most egregious thing you can say about a person and it has it put in a book. It's just so tragic and sad.
There is a woman who faced one of the scariest moments any mother could hear, a cancer diagnosis, and she handled it with quiet strength. No cameras everywhere, no turning pain into a public show, no pushing a victim story for attention. She simply spoke honestly, thanked her doctors, and focused on others instead of herself. Then there's another woman who built a career around being seen as constantly attacked, misunderstood, and treated unfairly.
She definitely shows herself to be strong, and her appearance just comes off very glowingly because she has this authentic grace about her that just shines through, and that's what we see. And because Megan is the complete opposite of that, this is why she comes out looking a hot mess.
Reports even claimed she reacted to one joke on an American comedy show by cutting ties with a whole TV network. One woman is deeply admired by millions, while the other still seems confused about why public support keeps slipping away. If you're watching this, you already feel the difference. The contrast between Catherine, Princess of Wales, and Meghan Markle doesn't need a long explanation. A lot of people, especially women with life experience, pick up on it instantly. One comes across calm and genuine, while the other often leaves people feeling drained and frustrated. And now, royal experts, writers, critics, and long-time monarchy watchers are all landing on the same conclusion. They've looked at the interviews, photos, public moments, and insider reports, and many believe Catherine represents the qualities expected from a future queen, while Meghan keeps moving in the complete opposite direction. This goes way beyond outfits or public appearances. It's about character under pressure. It's about grace that feels real, versus moments that people believe look carefully staged and performative. And once you really see the difference between those two women, you can't unsee it.
The problem you've got here in a relationship with Meghan and Harry is this is a boy that was pretty much traumatized by media presence when he was little. He didn't really want any of this publicity. He was always attacking photographers. And she's someone, ever since she was on the red carpet, who's craved publicity.
Today, we're breaking down the contrast that has royal watchers everywhere talking. A lot of people are now questioning what Meghan's recent behaviour says about her character, while Catherine keeps earning respect without demanding attention. Many women, especially those who value loyalty, dignity, and quiet strength, keep asking the same thing. Why does one woman inspire lasting support, while the other struggles to keep public goodwill for more than a few headlines? The answer has been sitting right in front of everyone this whole time. Think back to the past year and a half for Catherine, Princess of Wales. She stepped away from public view, and instantly the internet exploded. Rumours spread everywhere. Social media turned into chaos filled with conspiracy theories, gossip, and ugly comments about her health, marriage, and even her children. Some of the rumours came from random online accounts, but others came from public figures and commentators who should have known better. Even some journalists gave attention to stories that were cruel and completely unsupported. And through all of it, Catherine stayed silent. She didn't rush to social media with emotional videos or carefully planned PR moments.
Meghan is always going to be on the short end of anything that Catherine does because Catherine is the real deal. This is why we see her the way we do, and Meghan is just not that. She never will be. Just look at how she left the royal family to show you the kind of woman she is, what she did to the late queen.
She didn't send people out to fight every rumor in the press. Instead, she focused on her family and handled things privately, just like she always has throughout her years in public life. Then, when the speculation became impossible to ignore, Catherine finally spoke out in a calm and respectful way. And for a moment, even many of her toughest critics went quiet. She told the truth quietly and clearly, without turning it into a dramatic public event. Catherine revealed there had been a cancer diagnosis, that her family needed private time to process it, especially for the children, and that she was thankful for her doctors and focused on recovery. But the part that really hit people was what she did next. Instead of making the moment all about herself, she spoke directly to others dealing with illness. She offered real empathy, not some polished PR line. When she said, "You are not alone," people believed her because it felt genuine and deeply human. That connected with millions of women watching around the world.
Everything is so reactive. And the thing about royalty sometimes is that you almost have to float and rise above it.
And it's a winning strategy, especially with someone like Meghan, because whenever she opens her mouth or tries to, say, "Oh, this is not true," it misses the mark every single time. Because Meghan is just not a woman of character.
Women who had faced health scares, terrifying diagnoses, and painful private moments saw something real in her response. You can't fake that kind of sincerity or hand it over to a publicist to manufacture. Either it's authentic or it isn't. Now compare that to what Meghan Markle has been doing lately. A widely discussed essay from commentator Queen Esther has sparked intense debate in royal circles. The essay argues that the difference between Catherine and Meghan goes beyond personality and comes down to character and how each woman handles pressure and adversity. The piece points out that Catherine has spent over 20 years under non-stop public scrutiny. Long before becoming Princess of Wales, photographers followed her constantly. Every outfit, expression and family detail was picked apart by the media in ways that could crush most people. When private topless photos of Catherine were published in 2012 without her consent, many people expected outrage and non-stop public attacks from her side. Instead, she handled it legally and quietly with striking composure.
I just think she's crying for sympathy, playing the victim when there's nothing to be a victim about, and there's also no sympathy to be granted for this lifestyle that she's chosen to live.
Then came the edited photo controversy, which certain parts of the internet jumped on with shocking excitement and non-stop criticism. Catherine's response was simple and calm. She gave a short apology, admitted the mistake, and moved on. No endless excuses, no blaming stuff, no dramatic campaign through friendly media outlets. She took responsibility and kept it pushing. That, according to the essay, is exactly why Catherine has earned deep and lasting public respect that Meghan has struggled to build, despite the interviews, podcasts, magazine covers, and carefully managed appearances. People believe Catherine's grace feels natural instead of staged, and many can sense the difference immediately. The contrast between the two goes way beyond style or public smiles. It touches something deeper about why some public figures create real loyalty, while others seem to spark non-stop controversy that fades just as fast. The essay argues it's not really about fame, beauty, or even charm. It's about putting duty and purpose ahead of yourself. Catherine has done that for years, often under intense pressure, and the public has noticed. A lot of people see her as someone willing to carry responsibility quietly, instead of constantly demanding attention. Now look at the recent public appearances that have everyone talking. Catherine was photographed during a visit to the University of East London, wearing a clean, elegant beige suit that looked polished without trying too hard.
She can't make fun of herself. And that's why she comes off so poorly, because she can't make fun of herself. She takes herself way too seriously, I think. And this is why she's always so upset about what people say and joke about her. This is Hollywood. This is comedy. You need to try to lighten up.
Nothing flashy, nothing screaming for attention, just calm confidence and professionalism. She looked exactly how many people imagine a future queen should look, composed, focused, and genuinely interested in the people around her. The photos weren't shocking or dramatic, and that's the point. They simply showed a woman handling her role with quiet confidence and no unnecessary spectacle. Meanwhile, Meghan appeared at the Time 100 summit wearing an outfit that many observers said looked wrinkled and poorly fitted. On its own, clothes might not seem like a huge deal, but people weren't really reacting to the outfit itself. They were reacting to what the moment appeared to represent. Catherine has never built her identity around fashion. By most accounts, she doesn't obsess over trends or turn every appearance into a branding exercise. Yet she consistently looks polished and appropriate for the occasion, because her attention seems focused on the people she's meeting and the role she's carrying out. Meghan, on the other hand, has made image and presentation a major part of her public brand. Her projects, aesthetic, and public persona are all closely tied to style and elegance. That's why the reaction to the Time appearance became such a talking point online. Many critics felt the final look didn't match the carefully crafted image she usually aims for, and that's where people say the real contrast shows up. It's less about expensive clothes and more about the gap between trying to project something and naturally giving that impression without effort.
There's a huge hypocrisy here given Catherine, Catherine suffering
Yes.
from cancer was hauled over the coals, especially in the American mainstream media. Yet Meghan sort of posts these pictures which all appear to be artificially altered. The actual pictures of the children, which are always so weird.
A candid photo or public moment can reveal a lot, especially when things don't go perfectly according to plan. Royal watchers also point out that Catherine never seems focused on competing with Meghan in public. She doesn't appear to treat appearances like a rivalry or fashion showdown. She shows up, handles her duties, and returns to her family life. Ironically, many people believe that low-key and effortless approach leaves a stronger impression than a highly strategic image campaign ever could. And that's become one of the biggest reasons the public keeps comparing the two women so differently. There's one moment in this story that says a lot about where Meghan Markle's public image stands right now. During a recent Saturday Night Live Weekend Update segment, a joke was made about Meghan as part of a larger comedy bit about the royal family. The joke was sharp and sarcastic, but that's exactly what SNL has done for decades. The show has mocked presidents, celebrities, world leaders, and basically anyone in the spotlight since 1975.
Meghan was warmly welcomed in Britain, that everyone in the royal family tried their very, very hardest to make her feel at home and accommodate her, but that unfortunately Meghan only wanted to be the star and made it impossible for her and the royal family to collaborate.
In many ways, getting mentioned on SNL is seen as proof that you're culturally relevant enough to be part of the conversation. But according to reports from people close to Meghan's circle, the reaction behind the scenes was anything but relaxed. Sources claimed she viewed the joke as personal humiliation rather than harmless comedy, and reportedly decided to cut ties with NBC, the network that airs SNL. That reaction caught a lot of attention online because people instantly compared it to Catherine's approach during years of intense media scrutiny. Catherine has dealt with ugly rumours, invasive headlines, and non-stop criticism without publicly lashing out or declaring war on entire media organisations. So when reports surfaced that Meghan was allegedly furious over one comedy joke, critics quickly labelled the response overly sensitive and hard to understand. Many people felt a confident public figure would simply ignore it, laugh it off privately, or move on without escalating the situation. And that comparison only widened the gap people already see between the two women. On one side, critics see Catherine staying composed under major pressure, while on the other, Meghan's reported reaction made headlines for appearing emotional and defensive over late-night comedy. The public figures who handle jokes and criticism best are usually the ones who feel secure in who they are. A late-night comedy sketch doesn't shake them because they don't depend on constant public approval to feel confident. And many critics believe Meghan's reported NBC reaction revealed the exact opposite.
Harry doesn't seem to understand that his life is going to be forever changed once he decides to do what he wants to do. And I know that is to no longer stay in California and to have his life back. And the minute he takes that step, that's when the threat, that's when the risk to his own life and that of his own family, the reputation becomes at stake, because that's exactly what's going to happen. Meghan has been documenting for years everything.
What made the situation stand out even more was the timing. Meghan isn't operating from a position where she can easily afford to shut out major media connections. Her podcast faded from headlines, her TV projects faced challenges, and her brand hasn't fully reached the level many expected after stepping away from royal life. That's why people viewed the reported NBC blacklist move as risky and self-defeating. Critics pointed out that someone trying to rebuild influence in entertainment usually needs strong media relationships, not public fallout with major networks. There's also a practical issue here that many commentators brought up. Saturday Night Live works separately from NBC News or daytime programming. Comedy writers on SNL create edgy jokes all the time without network executives approving every line. So punishing an entire network over one comedy segment struck many observers as an emotional overreaction. Beyond strategy though, People say this highlights a deeper personality difference between Meghan and long-lasting public figures. Celebrities who survive for decades usually know how to laugh at themselves. Sometimes they even lean into jokes because it makes them appear confident, relaxed and comfortable in their own image. That's a quality many royal watchers believe Catherine naturally projects. She rarely appears defensive or eager to fight every negative headline. And according to critics, that calm confidence is something Meghan still struggles to fully show in public moments under pressure. The shows and platforms that really shape public opinion usually avoid unnecessary drama. And critics say Hollywood pays close attention to reputations behind the scenes. A public figure seen as difficult, overly reactive or quick to cut ties can end up making future opportunities much harder to secure. That's why many commentators believe the current narrative around Meghan Markle is becoming a serious problem. The image forming in some media circles is of someone who takes criticism very personally and struggles to brush off even light mockery. Fair or not, that perception can follow a celebrity for years. And according to critics, this isn't a brand new pattern. They point to several past moments where Meghan reportedly distanced herself from outlets, challenged negative coverage, or responded strongly when she felt mistreated by the media or royal institution. Supporters would argue she was defending herself, while critics believe the reactions often became too public and too prolonged. Either way, people keep noticing the same cycle: conflict, public fallout, then another attempt to reset the narrative through interviews, projects, or media appearances. That comparison becomes even sharper when people look at how Catherine has handled years of invasive attention. She faced privacy violations, harsh gossip, rumours about her marriage, and intense online speculation during her illness. Yet her public approach has almost always stayed measured and restrained. Many royal watchers believe that's why Catherine continues to gain long-term respect. Instead of publicly fighting every battle, she focuses on protecting her family and continuing her duties. To supporters, that steady composure feels like real grace under pressure, and they see it as one of the biggest differences between the two women. The real difference, many people say, is choosing not to let pain completely shape your public response. And that brings the conversation to Harry, who is always somewhere in the background of this story, never fully at the centre, but impossible to ignore. A lot has changed for Harry over the past decade. He walked away from royal life, left behind the role he was raised for, and built a completely different life in California. But according to many reports and commentators, there are growing signs that he may not feel fully settled with how everything turned out.
We all know Harry is very miserable right now. I think the signs are there that Harry wants to get back to his royal life. He needs to get back to what is familiar to him.
At 40, Harry appears caught between two worlds. Returning to royal life seems extremely difficult after years of public tension and family fallout. Yet critics and observers also question whether his new life in California has brought the peace and purpose he may have expected. Publicly, Harry presents himself as independent and focused on activism, wellness, and personal freedom. But insiders and royal commentators often describe someone who still seems disconnected and uncertain about where he truly belongs. Some people close to the royal discussion believe Harry misses the stability and structure he once had. Not necessarily the palace itself, but the feeling of belonging to something bigger, without constantly having to manage a personal brand or public image. That's why many observers think the tension inside the Sussex world keeps growing quietly behind the scenes. Critics believe Meghan's recent media battles, reported frustrations, and attempts to control narratives may be part of a larger struggle to maintain influence and public relevance in a very competitive spotlight. But people close to the situation say it would be a mistake to underestimate Meghan Markle. Many observers describe her as both highly strategic and deeply reactive at the same time, a mix that can create decisions that look calculated one moment and emotional the next. Critics believe she's constantly aware of public perception and always trying to shape the narrative around herself. But they also argue that emotional reactions, like the reported frustration over the SNL joke, can sometimes overpower the strategy and lead to choices that create even more backlash. According to royal commentators, Meghan's media approach seems built around the idea that enough positive headlines, glamorous appearances, and supportive coverage can eventually shift public opinion back in her favour. The strategy appears focused on visibility, philanthropy, and carefully managed branding, But many critics argue the issue goes deeper than publicity. They say this isn't simply a PR problem that can be solved with polished interviews or flattering articles. In their view, public trust comes from consistency and authenticity over time, something people either genuinely feel or they don't. That's why some commentators believe every highly managed appearance can sometimes have the opposite effect. Instead of looking natural, critics say the effort can come across as overly staged or performative, especially to audiences who closely follow royal coverage and celebrity culture. At the core of the criticism is what opponents describe as a gap between Meghan's public image and the stories shared by critics, former staff, commentators, or people who claim to have worked around her. Fair or unfair, that disconnect has become one of the biggest talking points surrounding her public reputation today. And lately, many observers who once defended Meghan say that gap between her public image and reported behaviour has become harder to ignore. Meghan has repeatedly said she avoids press coverage, ignores social media, and no longer seeks outside validation. She's presented herself as focused on healing, positivity, and meaningful work. But then came the reported reaction to the SNL joke. According to multiple reports, the response inside her circle was immediate and angry, with claims that NBC was effectively cut off. That left critics asking which version of Meghan the public is supposed to believe. Is it the calm, media-proof public figure who says criticism doesn't affect her? Or the version critics describe as highly focused on every headline, every joke, and every perceived insult? Many long-time royal watchers believe both sides exist at once, and that contradiction keeps creating problems for her image. Commentators often describe two different Meghans: the polished public persona speaking about authenticity and compassion, and the more reactive figure critics claim works hard behind the scenes to control narratives and respond to negative coverage. That contrast becomes even sharper when people compare her to Catherine. Supporters of the Princess of Wales often say Catherine comes across the same in every setting, whether she's at a public event, visiting a hospital, or spending time with family. To them, that consistency feels natural and impossible to fake. And then there's the issue of the children, which adds another layer to the comparison. William and Catherine's 3 children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, are often described as remarkably grounded, considering the level of global attention surrounding their lives.
When you think about Meghan, I see somebody who's sort of, you could say, cosmopolitan. She doesn't really like the countryside. She doesn't really like to get dirty. Meghan, of course, is hyper focused on the royals. And I think Meghan always feels this massive inferiority complex. And so she's always trying to compete with Catherine in whatever way that she can.
The couple keeps their appearances limited and carefully controlled, only bringing them into public view at selected moments. William and Catherine have tried to give their children as much privacy as possible, despite living under non-stop public attention. The kids appear at major royal events and special occasions, but outside of that, their parents keep much of their lives away from cameras, social media, and constant public exposure. Harry and Meghan's approach with Archie and Lilibet has often sparked a different reaction online. There have been selective photos, carefully timed glimpses, and mentions of the children during interviews and public projects. Critics argue those moments sometimes blur the line between privacy and branding. Of course, the children themselves are completely innocent in all of this. They didn't choose public life, which is exactly why people pay so much attention to the parenting choices being made around them. Supporters and critics alike see those decisions as reflections of personal values and priorities. Many royal watchers believe the contrast between the Wales family and the Sussex family becomes especially noticeable here. William and Catherine are often praised for limiting exposure, even though public interest in their children is massive, while Meghan and Harry continue facing criticism over how they balance privacy with publicity. Inside the monarchy, most of this drama is met with silence. The palace rarely comments on Meghan's projects, media coverage, or controversies, and that restraint is very much part of how the institution operates. The royal family has long relied on patience, discipline, and carefully controlled public behaviour, rather than reacting to every headline. And many observers believe Catherine fits naturally into that style, while Meghan has struggled with it from the beginning. King Charles has also stayed mostly quiet about the ongoing tensions with Harry and Meghan. Some people see that silence as strategic patience, while others interpret it differently. But either way, the monarchy continues moving forward without publicly escalating the conflict. The monarchy's response to the Sussex era has largely been to lean even harder into the values they believe matter most. More public service, more quiet dedication, and more focus on steady community work instead of celebrity-style attention. That's where many people believe Catherine stands out the most. Whether she's visiting hospitals, schools, or community centres, supporters say she comes across focused on listening and helping, rather than creating headlines or building a personal brand. Critics of Meghan often argue that this is the core difference between the two women. Catherine appears connected to the traditional royal idea of service, while Meghan's public image has become more tied to media appearances, interviews, projects, and celebrity influence. And even during cancer treatment and recovery, Catherine continued receiving praise for staying calm, focused, and committed to her responsibilities whenever possible. Royal watchers say that consistency is a huge reason the institution continues standing firmly behind her. But many commentators believe there's also a larger lesson in Meghan's situation. They argue it's not just about failed PR or difficult headlines, but about what happens when a public image becomes heavily dependent on controlling perception. Meghan's critics say her brand has been built around being seen as authentic, courageous, and willing to challenge powerful systems. The problem, they argue, is that those are very big claims, and once someone presents themselves that way, every contradiction or emotional reaction gets examined much more closely. According to those critics, repeated gaps between public messaging and reported behaviour slowly damage credibility over time, and in today's media environment, people tend to remember those inconsistencies for a long time. Critics say the biggest issue surrounding Meghan Markle is the number of contradictions people believe they're seeing. The reported NBC fallout, the claim of ignoring media coverage while allegedly reacting strongly to criticism, and the ongoing tension between wanting privacy while still sharing selective family moments have all fueled debate online. Many commentators also point to what they see as a mismatch between Meghan's messaging about authenticity and mental health versus the highly managed public image surrounding her projects and appearances. Fair or unfair, those criticisms keep resurfacing in royal discussions.
Catherine and William are highly engaged parents. We see this reflected, whereas Harry and Meghan, they just give us these little tidbits, and you just got to wonder, who are the kids with the rest of the time? Meghan is more than willing to fly off to New York overnight just to go to a play, and most moms don't do that.
Supporters of Catherine often argue that she avoids these problems because she doesn't make sweeping claims about herself. She rarely tries to position herself as the most authentic or most outspoken person in the room. Instead, she focuses on carrying out royal duties in a steady and low-key way. And in a time dominated by celebrity branding, non-stop self-promotion, and social media performance, many people find that approach refreshing. Catherine's image is built less on speeches and more on consistency over many years in public life. Critics of Meghan believe that once someone builds a brand around personal values and authenticity, every action gets examined more intensely. Over time, they say, repeated contradictions can slowly damage public trust and make audiences more skeptical. As for the relationship between the Sussexes and the royal family, most reports suggest things remain tense and distant. The emotional and institutional gap still appears very large, and despite occasional speculation about reconciliation, there are few signs of a major repair happening behind the scenes anytime soon. There's still no real sign of the deep healing conversations that would be needed for a true reconciliation between the Sussexes and the royal family. Instead, what exists now looks more like careful distance, two completely different worlds moving in opposite directions while growing further apart over time. The changing American media landscape has also become a major talking point. Networks and outlets that once appeared strongly supportive of Meghan and Harry are now seen by commentators as far less enthusiastic than before. Industry shifts, changing leadership, and evolving audience reactions have all played a role. Critics believe this creates a difficult situation for Meghan, especially if reports about tensions with major networks like NBC are accurate. In entertainment and media, relationships matter, and observers say shrinking support from influential outlets could become a serious long-term problem. Meanwhile, Catherine continues doing exactly what she has always done. She attends events, meets communities, speaks with families, and carries out royal duties without turning every appearance into a media spectacle. Supporters say she comes across focused, patient, and genuinely engaged with the people around her. Many women see something relatable and admirable in that approach. Not necessarily the royal title or glamour, but the steady character and consistency she projects in public life. Critics and supporters alike often agree that her image feels stable and dependable. At the same time, public sympathy for Harry and Meghan appears very different from what it was in the early years after leaving royal life. The original narrative of independence and freedom has faded for many audiences, replaced by growing skepticism and fatigue surrounding the constant public drama.
There was sort of several examples of her being rude to staff. I mean, I heard, that she was rude to the gardener, the under gardener, and the head gardener reported this to the Queen. The Queen got into her car and drove down and ticked her off because you're not to be rude to staff.
What has replaced the early sympathy for the Sussexes is a growing feeling among many observers that the story presented to the public no longer matches the reality people believe they're seeing unfold. And that widening gap has become one of the biggest themes surrounding Harry and Meghan right now. At the same time, a lot of media coverage has tried to turn the Catherine and Meghan comparison into a simple battle of hero versus villain. But many commentators argue the real story is more complicated than that. Supporters of Catherine believe what truly sets her apart is emotional intelligence and consistency under pressure. They say she understands that long-term influence isn't built through non-stop attention or viral moments, but through trust earned steadily over time. According to those observers, trust comes from repeatedly showing up, doing the work, and handling difficult moments with composure, even when public scrutiny becomes intense. Catherine's supporters believe she has demonstrated that for more than 20 years in royal life. Critics of Meghan, meanwhile, argue that too much focus has been placed on branding, visibility, and media strategy. Podcasts, interviews, streaming deals, and lifestyle projects may create headlines, but many believe they don't automatically create lasting public trust. And that's why the contrast between the two women keeps resonating with audiences. Many people, especially older women who have lived through difficult experiences themselves, say they can sense the difference between carefully managed image building and character revealed consistently over time under real pressure. The future Queen people are watching isn't the one who chased the title the hardest. It's the one many believe earned respect day after day through consistency and quiet dedication. And in a world obsessed with image, performance, and attention, that difference stands out more than ever. For a lot of women watching, Catherine represents something deeply familiar. Not glamour or perfection, but the quiet pride that comes from doing the right thing even when nobody is clapping for you. Supporters see in her the kind of steady strength that doesn't need constant validation to feel real. And maybe that's the bigger question behind this entire story. Have you ever watched one person perform kindness and another person simply live it naturally? From the outside, those two things can sometimes look similar at first, but over time the difference becomes impossible to ignore. Because that's what this conversation has really been about from the start. Can someone build genuine respect through image management alone? Or do people eventually recognize the difference between performance and authenticity? A lot of viewers feel the past few years have already answered that question very clearly. Now I want to hear from you. Have you always noticed this contrast between Catherine and Meghan, or did your opinion change gradually over time? And what do you think makes Catherine connect with so many people in a way that others with huge platforms and polished branding still struggle to match? Drop your thoughts in the comments because I genuinely want to know what you think. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone else who follows the royal family.